and welcome to the Filmstein Podcast, a podcast where we are challenged with trying to articulate a love for art and storytelling. Today I'm joined by my class president friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
I'm glad everybody could join us today. Thank you very much for being here, because today we will be talking about Jared Hess's 2004 film, Napoleon Dynamite. And I'm very curious where this conversation takes us here today, because this film is full of surprises. I had a big moment while watching this film of what it is, what it's trying to say, what it means. It was one of those moments where everything just fell into place. I thought it was really strange that Napoleon got on the bus with a bunch of middle schoolers, maybe some fifth graders, not high schoolers. And I was real hung up on that point for a while. And then it dawned on me that this was the film's way of opening the door of Napoleon's perspective on the world, how he sees himself, and how he interprets the world. I think the film even tries to double down on the point to remind you that we're entering this distorted world of Napoleon. He enters this bus, sits down next to this blonde-haired boy. Napoleon does this weird thing, throws the toy out. It's very elementary. But we see a similar composition with a young man that you could imagine being the older version of that young boy on the bus. Blonde hair, and also displays a very explicit, childish action, squishing Napoleon's tots in his pocket. But the way the characters talk to each other, it's very reminiscent of a 7th, 8th grader, the way they talk with each other at recess, the fact that they have recess, what they're doing at recess, them passing notes, the glorification of the mustache, the distorted perspective on adults. To the point I think Kip is actually Napoleon's dad, and Napoleon has such a little respect for him, probably because he's maybe harder to respect being so young and living with his mom, the grandma. The grandma appears older than she actually is because kids think middle-aged people are really old. The honest but still absurd caricature of Uncle Rico. The fact that we don't see any sports or other students driving. It all starts to paint this picture of this warped perspective, not unlike what we've seen in Forrest Gump and Amadeus and other films. This is how Napoleon sees himself and his world, when in reality he's probably a 7th or 8th grader, not a 11th or 12th grader maybe. But all in all, I don't think there's a lot of so-called messaging in the film. I think it's mostly an observation of the awkward stages of growing up. It almost feels like a expose on some kind of solidarity of we've all been there. But I'm very curious, how did you feel about Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah, Napoleon Dynamite is a movie that I didn't initially love. And honestly, I found it quite boring. Nothing happens. And Napoleon is weird. This movie grew on me. And as I got older, I found it more endearing. We've discussed over and over in several episodes the importance of time and place and who you watch a film with, or if you watch it alone, and just how important all those aspects can be in your absorption of a film. This was a time and place movie for me. I was like in 2nd grade or something when this movie came out, so I never watched it then. And then I watched it in middle school and couldn't be more embarrassed for a character like Napoleon. And then you enter high school, when you're a little less concerned about being cool, and you start finding your friends who help you embrace your weirdness, your personality. You meet the kids that read the same fantasy and weird sci-fi books that you read, the kids that like the same weird music that you do, the kids who appreciate your craziness, your oddness. So as a later teen, this movie started speaking to me on another level. I couldn't be more opposite to a character like Napoleon. And this movie offers a beautiful critique on how society labels someone as different or weird or awkward, and assumes that those traits are wrong or broken, that a person should change to correct themselves, to conform. But why should he? It's just who he is. He's not hurting anyone thinking and behaving in the way he does. In fact, he's the one getting hurt and bullied by other people and their misunderstandings. I think this movie is a bit messagey in that Napoleon is teaching everyone to embrace their individuality. His refusal to conform is awesome because the pressure to fit in says more about societal discomfort than anyone's personal failure. And honestly, it's super important now more than ever with social media being at the palm of your hand. We have these influencers constantly telling you how to look, how to act, what to buy, how to dress, how to speak. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for social media being used as a tool for personal development and motivation, but the key word there is personal. Watch your videos. Watch your workout videos, your motivational videos, the videos that get you inspired, the videos that get you thinking, the ones that help you grow and think about other people, helping other people. I just hate to say it, but individuality and authenticity are becoming rare, which is ironic in this society that's so accepting of everyone's individuality and weirdness. We're all starting to act like sheeps and look like clones with no autonomy. And similar to Ignacio in Nacho Libre, both characters are weird and they stay weird. They don't change who they are. They don't change their personality. But Ignacio does alter his principles, of course, for something worth fighting for. But what I love about Napoleon is that he doesn't change anything about himself the entire film, which probably makes this more of a slice of life kind of film because he remains so static. But that's the point of the movie. It's pretty awesome. He doesn't need to change who he is. He accepts who he is unapologetically and gains friendships as himself. It's pretty beautiful. His dance sequence at the end of the film, as weird and crazy as it is his way of helping a friend and the ultimate loyalty test. The cinematography was oddly fantastic. We don't have a lot of camera movement. Everything feels washed out, which adds to the blandness of the small town they're living in. It supports the offbeat nature of the film and the simplicity of life we're going for. And there's a lot to love in this film. The small town quirkiness, the high schoolisms, the soundtrack. Again, another perfect soundtrack for Hess, for Jared. He's 2 for 2. The characters are great. And the sighing. Oh my god, the sighing killed me. I don't know if I ever paid attention the first time or two I watched this, but this time around, I just loved how expressive the sighing was without even thinking about it. He is exasperated with the world around him. He's just frustrated and confused and annoyed and apathetic. You name it. He's just living in this small town, and the sigh is almost like his catchphrase or a punchline. It's awesome. And the ending to the film gave me a very similar vibe to the ending of Nacho Libre, where I felt happy, I felt joy, but here we linger on it, and I love it. We just get to watch him and Deb, his friend, finally someone he can play tetherball with. I really like what you said about this being Napoleon's perspective. I definitely agree with you there. This is how he sees the world. Maybe I don't quite agree with you that Kip is his dad and he just looks down on him in that way, but Kip doesn't look like a 32-year-old man, so maybe that could be skewed. And maybe I didn't quite see Napoleon as someone who should be younger, but more along the lines of he acts younger because of that innocence and that simpleness through his actions.
Yeah, what a great read of this movie. There's an uncompromising level of energy in Napoleon, in his way of life, whether that just be his oddball individualism or the perceived representation of how a 7th, 8th grader sees themselves. It's still a challenging force because every 8th grader is awkward. every 8th grader is uncompromising in who they are, or any teenager for that matter. You paint a great picture of someone's individuality. And given a little time in high school with a little bit of outward expression, whether it's through the universe or what have you, you seem to attract those like-minded people. And I love your point of this kind of moment of climax when Napoleon finally has someone to play with. He really kind of goes hard on her at the end there, but she's present. He has a friend, and in my headcanon, he has a friend at recess. The most crucial part of the day. The time of day that identifies those who are the loneliest.
While I do love your metaphor, this warped perspective that Napoleon has, that we view through his eyes, I have a different perspective for that. He's in a bus with these kids because they live in a small town. There's one bus, probably for the entire town. And all the high schoolers either drive themselves or ride their bikes. Maybe they live closer to town. And Napoleon is stuck in the country. He has to travel further. Maybe he happens to be the only high schooler who lives outside of a walking distance to school, and he has to get picked up by the bus. And it just is what it is. He does live with his grandma. I don't think Kip is his dad or an idea of his dad, so he has no parents. Life just is what it is for Napoleon, and he's fully embraced it. The passing of the notes, the growing a mustache, and this adult recess, as you call it, are things that happen in high school. These are the high schoolisms. Maybe some of the lost high schoolisms. I'd be curious to see if people still pass notes. Do you just text each other now? How does that work? But there is a class called PE, and I think that's what's going on here with the tetherball. But because they are in a small town, they don't have the fancy gym or the track or maybe those kinds of things.
They're playing on the recess field where the elementary kids play.
Yeah, maybe. And even his grandma, she looks like a grandma because she is a grandma. If Kip is 32, she should be looking like that, right? The only one I can't explain away is Uncle Rico, and I can't wait to talk about him. I would like to add a little bit, a key difference to Napoleon's individuality and lack of conformity, to kind of emphasize that Napoleon is not rejecting to conform for the sake of non-conforming. Because there are people out there who use that lack of social acceptance to feel like they're above others. And I really hope that doesn't get mistaken here, because Napoleon speaks the way he speaks about himself, being this great artist and having all these skills, because that literally is just himself.
I don't know if it's just me, but isn't that very reminiscent of the playground talk, of all those secrets and mysteries and frankly lies we would tell each other about the ninth world in Super Mario Brothers? Or if you beat that certain boss under a certain amount of time, you will unlock this thing, or all these crazy activities you did over the weekend, like beating up a bunch of badgers or whatever he was talking about. It's the exact kind of exaggeration and imagination that we just spewed out, and no one was there to call you out or criticize, because you just don't as middle schoolers. Those drawings were drawings that an 8th grader would do, and he thought they were great. Deb selling those bracelets is exactly what a middle schooler would do.
Yeah, I don't quite agree with that. I think there's no age to that. I still know grown people who exaggerate about their weekends, their plans, their status. And I like what you said about Deb selling her bracelets to make some money, because what is Uncle Rico doing?
He's slinging Tupperware.
He's slinging Tupperware to make some money. Maybe the small townness of this place makes it feel a bit retrograded, like it's not quite developed. Maybe everyone has stayed in middle school. Even Uncle Rico. Even Kip.
I actually think Uncle Rico, maybe not surprisingly, is one of the essential pieces to sell this distortion as some kind of truth, because Uncle Rico is the truest thing in the film. And that's because he is the furthest away from Napoleon. Napoleon can't have this extraordinarily distorted perspective of Uncle Rico because Uncle Rico isn't part of Napoleon's life on a day-to-day basis. And so there is some honesty still in that character.
There is nothing honest about Uncle Rico.
And it's kind of funny because he is probably still the most absurd character. Uncle Rico's outlook on life is very iconic in everyone's life. Everyone has, at different points in their lives, had those people who are ostensibly obsessed with the past. If this could have happened, I could have been this. If this would have went this way, maybe this would have happened.
Or the high school glory days.
Yeah. Or college too. There's a lot of truth in that kind of character that turns into a caricature. And Rico is that caricature, but is still a tether of truth in the film. And I think ultimately disguises the distorted perspective, because Napoleon doesn't need to distort Uncle Rico. He can't distort him because he's not part of his life. I don't know if this is making sense, but with Uncle Rico and Napoleon's perspective on Kip being his brother, ultimately kind of showing the audience where Napoleon places him in his mind, how little respect he has for his dad, and that he wastes his life away talking to mysterious women, and even going as far as painting Kip's personality as someone who would exaggerate about talking with people online. I think obviously trying to suggest that he's lying about talking to someone from the audience's perspective at the very least. And of course, LaFonda shows up and we're all surprised. And they really just continue to hammer that nail home for me, because at the very, very end, I guess the post-credits section where Kip and LaFonda are getting married, Napoleon shows up on this horse, and it just screams that 8th grader daydream hero type mentality, where you're imagining a scenario, and if this and this happened, I would act this way and I would be celebrated. But I guess to your point of Napoleon's uncompromising personality and way of life, and of course Pedro's support, it's a big win to manage to get a horse up there where they were getting married, and to be reciprocated by someone like Pedro and kind of high five and it be a yes moment. Makes a lot of sense too in the individuality realm.
Yeah, I can definitely see Napoleon saying, you know what would be cool to bring to Kip's wedding? A horse. And then Pedro saying, you know what would be even cooler? If you came in riding on the horse with a sultry outfit, like in those romance novels or something like that. I can definitely see that. And again, while we do have different perspectives, I will add one thing that corroborates your theory is the time machine. Giving this time element to the film, a warped perspective on time. Maybe Kip is Napoleon's dad and wants to use it for himself, similar to how Uncle Rico wants to use it for himself, to go back in time for those glory days. But to me, Uncle Rico is more of a cautionary tale. If you're not true to yourself, if you're not the Napoleon, you are the Uncle Rico. If you're stuck reminiscing about the past, you lose yourself. He has these get-rich-quick schemes, and then we mirror that with Napoleon going out and doing honest work. He gets paid
That's true.
like $6 or something, but it's honest work. He worked hard for that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially in really any high school movie, having that end result of what you could look like after high school if you don't find yourself, if you don't go through the coming of age story that Napoleon doesn't need to go through. He went there a long time ago and he is who he is. He found himself. But Uncle Rico is kind of a cautionary tale in that way. while he is funny, what he does is funny, he is kind of a tragic character.
Yeah, and I definitely see in the start of the movie, Kip follows into his footsteps with the whole Tupperware scheme. But then Kip finds his wife, his love, and she starts to influence him and shape him to be something different than what Uncle Rico is.
When LaFonda was influencing Kip in giving him, I think, a studded cross, and I think at some point a do-rag and a whole get-up and everything, it just furthered my thought on Napoleon's warped perspective of how much this woman is changing Kip. Of course, he's not completely changing his clothes and his mannerisms, but from Napoleon's warped, childlike perspective, LaFonda is changing Kip in that way.
Yeah, I took LaFonda's influence on Kip in a more charming way based off her interactions with Napoleon. He likes her. She gives him a tape. They talk about dancing. He brings a horse to their wedding. He's obviously approved of LaFonda. So Kip's influence was, to me at least, spent in a positive way.
Yeah, I could even see it as LaFonda completing Kip. Because it's almost like she allowed Kip to find himself in a funny way, but still. It's like the point you made earlier, Kip's the only character that goes through any kind of change because he's being pulled in by the gravity of the cautionary tale, the fear in this world. Kip's the only character that has a choice to make to be another Uncle Rico or to do something with his life.
Kip seems to be the only person in that middle age too. He's not with these high schoolers, kindergartners, or with the grandmas and the Uncle Ricos, any of the grown-ups. He's 32. He's right in the middle. He's at the age to choose his path. One of my favorite parts of the entire movie is when Pedro basically has an anxiety attack. We don't say it, but he disappears, and next thing you know, he shaved his head. When he's asked why, he says, I don't know. I guess I got kind of hot. And there's so many levels to this that I love. We don't address exactly what happened because I don't think the characters know exactly what happened. I don't think Pedro knows. He experienced an anxiety attack or a panic attack. You get hot all of a sudden. And of course, teens of the early aughts were not hyper aware like teens are now of mental problems. But Pedro is under a lot of pressure. He's a new kid. He's a Mexican in rural Idaho. And he's running for class president. He's under so much distress that he shaves his head. Which I also love that Dev and Napoleon just accept it and help him in the only ways they know how to help him. And that's enough. I think the sequence really captures something unspoken, like a lot of things in this film. It shows us the emotional stakes without spoon feeding us. People express pressure in different ways, right? People color their hair, or you cut your bangs. And I just love that something can be so hidden behind a joke. And how even our calmest characters can feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's more of that nonchalantness of being in school, in grade school, in that loyalty of great friends. They may not ask what happened, they may not want the details, but they're there for you. And it's also a great, quick glance at there's more to everyone than meets the eye. You don't know what people are going through at home. And that may even help play up this visual irony of what you see isn't what you get.
Yeah, Jared really has a knack for that. One of the coolest standouts in the film is the opening credits. I mean, they're great. It sets the tone of the film so perfectly. It gives us a peek into Napoleon's character with some of the oddness that is happening with the plates and the papers and the erasers. I also love that you can't quite tell what era It feels like the 90s, 80s, but it could also be present day, at least in 2004. So I guess you could say this movie is a bit timeless in that way. What you literally see on screen adds to the deadpan and the mundanity, all while We're Going to Be Friends is playing in the background. Not only to add that simplicity, and I like the way you said it too, the nonchalantness of life, of Napoleon's life, but kind of having that book ending moment too with him and Deb at the end of the film being friends, playing together.
Yeah, those opening credits are, without a doubt, some of the coolest opening credits ever made. It's kind of like how Warner Brothers occasionally stylizes the WB when a film is opening up. I wish people had more love and care to complete the package of some kind of
uniqueness to the movie.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for watching this movie with me and talking about it here today.
You're welcome.
Do you have a budget guess?
I'm going with 15 mil.
Well, it says here that it was $400,000, and it went on to make $46.1 million, so more than 100 times its budget. And over on Letterboxd, with 937,000 people, they weighed in at a 3.7.
I think I'm going to give this movie a 4. There's aspects of Napoleon's character that I really enjoy. His lack of care of how the world views him. His lack of care when he does get mistreated. When his tater tots get squished. When the girl he asked out to the dance ditches him. When the bully puts him in a chokehold. Those things hurt his feelings, but he doesn't put on a sob story. Life is the way it is, and if you didn't get to enjoy me, then that's your loss. At least that's the attitude I believe he takes during those sighs and bolstering comments. I love that the film is endless. You can take the message and run with it. You can get inspired by Napoleon. You can get inspired by his life choices, the choices he makes for friendship, for family. And it's not like he has this happy attitude towards everything, but that nonchalantness, that reception is gold. I love the aesthetic of the movie. I didn't know it was that low budget. It feels purposeful, like it was always meant to be like this. Whether Jared had 15 mil versus 400,000. The soundtrack, the score was awesome. The characters, their interactions with each other were hilarious. Shout out to Lyle and his words of wisdom in that closing scene where he gives some of the best advice. If you're ever mad or in an argument, go outside and take a walk. You'll calm down. Lyle is hilarious. There's other very hilarious moments in the film. They're so deadpan. I love it. The plot might have been a little too light for me. I'm glad the movie wasn't long, or that could have been a problem. And even though Napoleon didn't have a character arc, the payoff was still there, and I was actually quite surprised by it. When his classmates cheered for him after the dance sequence, no one's expecting it, but it was awesome. And that ending scene with him and Deb playing on the tetherball was very heartwarming. I think the more times I watch this movie, I like it more and more. So I'll stick at a 4 for now.
There's a lot I like in Napoleon Dynamite. The visual irony is out of this world. The scoring's great. The sound design's great. The cinematography is very cool. I love its flatness. I love its characters and dynamics. And yeah, we don't really have a proper plot or character development, but there is that kind of unspoken setup of Napoleon doesn't have a lot of friends, if any, before Pedro. But after the film, he has 2 new great friends. And that is super heartwarming. Especially on my point I will die by. I love the idea of going from being alone at recess to having that partner in crime at recess. Napoleon's great, and everyone knows it. It's great for different reasons. And in my book, it's a solid 3.5. It's extraordinarily complete. Its writing is even and consistent through and through. Its characters and dynamics are impenetrable. Its messaging, limitless. Its aesthetic is second to none. Napoleon Dynamite's a great film. And thank you again for talking about this film here today, my man. And thank you guys for listening to this episode of The Filmistines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every week on YouTube, Patreon, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the places to freeload. Our next episode will be on Ari Aster's Midsummer. So please look forward to that. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, or ideas, go over to our Patreon. Subscribe, write in, request a film if you want. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon, patreon.com/filmistines. And follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is The Filmistines, signing off.